Alright, welcome back to MusicGuru, the channel where rock and metal never die and every classic note still matters. George Harrison was never the flashiest guitarist of the 60s, but ask any serious musician and they'll tell you what he didn't play was just as important as what he did play. Minimalist, melodic, master of taste over technique. But was this less is more approach truly his artistic choice, or was it the result of being overshadowed in the Beatles? Let's explore how George Harrison's understated guitar playing became one of rock's most quietly revolutionary forces, and whether he was held back by the very band that made him famous. I want you to listen in right here to a clip of Alice Cooper speaking, and he's talking here about how George Harrison was a master of taste. Let's listen in right here.
George Harrison never played a note that didn't belong, and as soon as he got done, he got out. He was like da-da-da-da-da-da, out. Most guitar players noodle. They're really nervous. They just noodle, while they're playing. And it fills in all those spaces that need to be there. So when you get a guy like a George Harrison, he'll play just that one phrase and then get out. And that's what made the Beatles' music so good. Nothing was ever in the way of anything else. The vocal was here. When the vocal was gone, the guitar came in. Now, if you listen to other bands, the vocal's going, the guitar's going, the bass is going, the drums are going, and you're going, why doesn't that sound like the Beatles? Well, because everything's working against each other, So when you listen to a Beatles song, it's so perfectly easy to remember because nothing's in the way. The melody's there, the guitar's there, and it's done.
So Alice Cooper's not alone in this opinion. Plenty of musicians admire George Harrison for avoiding shredding and letting the songs speak for themselves. He has a lot of range in his playing, even though he is a minimalist player. He has country flavors, he has rockabilly flavors, he has transcendental sitar-inspired flavors, and he is equally at home with up-tempo song like Taxman or a really beautiful ballad like Something, which he also wrote. And the one thing that seems to be a commonality in everything he plays is restraint. Many people have commended Harrison for his choice of being a minimalist player, but here we're going to listen to Bob Dylan put forward an alternate theory about why George Harrison didn't play very much in the Beatles. So let's listen in right here.
George got stuck, with being the Beatle that had to fight to get songs on records because of Lennon and McCartney. Well, who wouldn't get stuck? Mm-hmm. I mean, if George had his own group and was writing his own songs back then, he'd have been probably just as big as anybody. George had uncanny ability to just play chords and of just that didn't seem to be connected in any kind of way, and come up with a melody and a song. I mean, I don't know anybody else who could do that either. I mean, what can I tell you?
We look back on him like incredibly tasteful guitar player and inventive, and
totally
different than anybody
totally.
else.
Totally.
Every single thing he did was a new one,
Yeah, he was from that old line of playing where every note was a note to be counted.
Mm-hmm. How close were you to him? Very close, right?
Yeah.
What was the nature of your friendship?
Well, we'd known each other since the old days, really. I knew the Beatles really early on.
So basically what Bob Dylan's suggesting there is that Harrison may have had to be quiet musically and almost creatively because of the overpowering presence of Lennon and McCartney. And if you think about it, there's so many Beatles tracks that are driven by John and Paul, with George just given a tiny little space to contribute in. And so over time, you can almost imagine that he adapted to this dynamic and learned how to make a big statement in just a few bars of music that they gave him to solo over, and then the 1 or 2 tracks they might let him put on an album. Let's listen in here to Eric Clapton discussing the kind of power dynamics that were going on in the Beatles at that time, and why he thinks he was brought in to play on the track While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Let's listen in right here.
Did you sing on the Beatles' White Album, or did you play on the Beatles?
I played guitar on one track, yeah.
Just because you was unbilled, right?
Yeah, it was an anonymous venture, but George was I think George was struggling with the two big boys in the group, and he needed some backup.
So according to Clapton, he was brought in to play on the song not because George couldn't do the solo, but because he thought that by bringing in Clapton, John and Paul would take the song more seriously, and that they wouldn't stop treating him like a junior member of the band because he was writing good songs on his own. Now, there's an even more famous moment during the recording of Hey Jude that shows this power imbalance. George came up with a guitar part that answered Paul's vocal during the opening verses, but Paul shut it down and said that he didn't want a call and response dynamic in the song, and some people argue that this is what made Hey Jude a timeless classic, while others wonder if it might have sounded better with the guitar added. Now, I've done a video on this if you care to look it up in the archives. So my question to you is, was George Harrison a minimalist by design or by necessity? Was he the quiet Beatle because he chose to serve the music, or because he wasn't allowed to speak up? Either way, his influence is massive. You can hear it in players across the spectrum throughout the history of rock and classic rock, and he is the personification of giving power to silence. So, in my opinion, I think that Harrison would have liked to have played more and contributed more songs than the Beatles, and I do think that the Lennon-McCartney power block had a lot to do with his contributions being diminished. But I also think that this is a good thing. I think it made the Beatles a balanced band, and it made them different from other bands where guitarists sometimes tended to solo too much or overshadow the other players. This is what I think, but what really matters is what you think. So if you have an idea about this or any other topic connected to classic or contemporary music, please drop it in the section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot.